In the Kentucky State Archives, there's a single water-stained document, filed under Unresolved Cases, 1847. It tells of a man who simply vanished, Jeremiah O'Brien, an Irish immigrant pig farmer who disappeared from Harrison County without leaving a body, a clue, or even a trace of blood. But what makes this case so disturbing isn't his disappearance. It's what was found in the county clerk's office, an inventory of livestock that showed the O'Brien pigs suddenly gaining weight at a rate no farmer of the time could explain. Historians have argued about it for nearly 2 centuries, but local people whisper a darker explanation, one they've carried in secret for generations. Even today, old folks in Harrison County cross themselves if you say the O'Brien name aloud. Loudspeaker. Before we continue with the chilling truth of Catherine O'Brien, the woman at the center of this mystery, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. These stories are why we dig deep into America's hidden history. And let us know in the comments what state you're watching from, because tonight, you'll want to keep the lights on. The woman called Fire Cat. Our trail begins not with Jeremiah, but with his wife, Catherine Flanagan O'Brien. She had come to Kentucky from County Cork, Ireland, 3 years before, carrying the scars of the Great Famine, scars of hunger, disease, and loss. Her passage to America had been paid through a marriage contract arranged by the Catholic Church. Catherine was only 24, with sharp green eyes and hair the color of flame, always pinned tight under her bonnet. The dock workers in Louisville called her Fire Cat, not for her hair, but for the way she stared straight through a man, like she already knew what he was hiding. That fire was what kept her alive when she reached Harrison County. The farm of broken promises. Her new husband, Jeremiah O'Brien, was nothing like the promise she had been sold. The papers claimed he owned 40 fertile acres and a thriving pig farm. But when Catherine arrived, she found only 12 starving pigs, a barn collapsing in on itself, a 2-room cabin that leaked whenever the western winds blew. Even worse, the land was mostly rock and hillside, not much use for crops. The mortgage was already 3 months overdue. And Jeremiah himself, a heavy, gray-haired man, 15 years older than Catherine, who shook unless he had whiskey in his hands. He spent his days in taverns, gambling away whatever coins Catherine managed to scrape together. The Irish community whispered that Jeremiah had once been different, before his brief service in the Mexican War. Something had broken him there, leaving behind a bitter man who drowned himself in drink. Catherine's willpower. But Catherine didn't give up. She patched fences with her own hands. She bargained with merchants. She cared for the pigs as if they were children. By the end of 1846, she had doubled the herd, 23 strong, fat animals that caught the attention of butchers in nearby towns. Against all odds, the farm was beginning to thrive, not because of Jeremiah, but because of Catherine's grit and knowledge of farming from back home. Neighbors who once sneered at the Irish started whispering about her work ethic. Some said she worked harder than most men. But for every dollar Catherine earned, Jeremiah wasted too. The cracks begin to show. As winter of 1846 dragged on, Catherine noticed Jeremiah becoming restless. He began speaking obsessively about California, where gold had just been discovered. He wanted to sell the farm and chase riches out west. Catherine refused. The farm was finally profitable, finally worth something. But their arguments grew louder. Neighbors began noticing the changes. Catherine, once lively, grew pale and hollow-eyed, always looking over her shoulder. Jeremiah, more erratic, bragged in taverns about big plans and easy money no one could explain. Even their priest, Father Michael O'Connell, recalled Catherine asking him unsettling questions. What does the church say of a wife defending herself, or her land? The priest only told her that God sees all things, even those done in darkness. The isolated hollow. The O'Brien farm sat deep in the hills, at the end of a dirt road that wound away from the main highway. Woods surrounded the cabin and barn, keeping it hidden from view. Their nearest neighbors lived nearly a mile away. At night, no sounds carried beyond their hollow. Whatever happened on that farm, happened in silence. By early 1847, the pigs were fattening beautifully. Catherine planned a massive sale to pay off debts and secure the farm's future. For the first time, hope flickered again. But hope was about to turn into horror. The hidden letters. One cold evening, while Jeremiah was away, Catherine searched through his belongings. Beneath their bed, inside a rusted tobacco tin, she discovered folded letters. They were from a Louisville land speculator. The letters described negotiations for selling the O'Brien farm, everything she had worked for, without her knowledge. Jeremiah hadn't told her. He was ready to take the money, abandon her, and leave her with nothing. For Catherine, this wasn't just betrayal. It was the spark that would ignite everything that followed. The secret, the disappearance, the weight gain of the pigs, and the mystery that would haunt Kentucky forever. Clapperboard closing tease for Part 2. In Part 2, we'll uncover what Catherine did after finding those letters, an impossible choice that turned a desperate woman into something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. If you're ready for the next chapter of The Vanishing of Jeremiah O'Brien, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. Because the story of the Fire Cat has only just begun. Do you want me to continue building all 10 parts in this same cinematic YouTube script style, each approximately 1,000 words, or should I send you only Part 2 next? The Vanishing of Jeremiah O'Brien. Part 2. The Blow That Changed Everything. Clapperboard opening hook. March 15, 1847. A gray, humid morning settled over Harrison County, Kentucky, the kind of morning that farmers swore carried trouble in the air. By nightfall, Jeremiah O'Brien, a man whose name still stirs unease in local taverns, would be gone. And his wife, Catherine, the woman they called Fire Cat, would cross a line that could never be uncrossed. Loudspeaker, before we step deeper into this mystery, make sure you're subscribed and have hit that notification bell. These lost and buried stories from America's past are why we're here. And drop your city or state in the comments. We love hearing where our fellow mystery hunters are watching from. The discovery that shattered trust. Catherine O'Brien hadn't slept much the night before. She lay awake in the small, drafty cabin listening to Jeremiah's labored snoring, her mind replaying what she had found hidden beneath their bed, letters from a Louisville land speculator. Those letters revealed Jeremiah's plan. He had been arranging the sale of their farm for months, in secret. Worse, he wasn't just planning to pocket the money. He was leaving, heading west to California, with another woman. Her name was Mary Brennan, a young widow from the Irish community in Georgetown. While Catherine was breaking her back to feed the pigs and save the farm, Jeremiah was planning a future that left her with nothing. And under Kentucky law in 1847, a wife had no legal claim to her husband's land or property. Everything Catherine had built would be ripped from her hands. The calm before the storm. That morning, the mist hung heavy between the trees. Catherine went about her chores, feeding the pigs, collecting eggs, checking on a sow that was close to birthing. She moved quietly, almost mechanically. But inside, she had already made her decision. She could not allow Jeremiah to destroy her life. Around 10 o'clock, Jeremiah stumbled from the cabin, already reeking of whiskey. His shirt was stained, his hair uncombed. He mumbled about heading into town, his gait unsteady as he shuffled toward the stable. Catherine's voice cut across the hollow like a blade. "We need to talk, Jeremiah." The confrontation. He froze mid-step, turned, and squinted at her through bloodshot eyes. "Talk about what?" he muttered, though suspicion already flickered there. Catherine set down her bucket of scraps, reached into her apron, and held up the folded letters. Jeremiah's face changed instantly, recognition, then anger. His words slurred, but his voice carried venom. "You had no right to go through my things." "Your things?" Catherine shot back, her voice calm but steady. "Private plans to sell my work, to sell our farm, and run away with Mary Brennan. Is that what you call your things?" For 3 years she had worked herself to exhaustion while Jeremiah drank. 3 years of sweat and sacrifice, and now he planned to throw it all away. You don't own nothing. Jeremiah stepped closer, fists tightening at his sides. "My name's on the deed. My signature's on the mortgage. You're just the wife, Catherine. You don't own nothing. The words cut sharper than any blade. But Catherine's face didn't flinch. She had expected them. I won't let you do it, she said flatly. Jeremiah barked a laugh, bitter and mocking. You won't let me. You think you've got some say. I already signed the papers. McReynolds comes tomorrow to finish it. By next week, I'll be halfway to California, and you can figure out how to survive on your own. The spark of rage. Catherine's eyes flicked toward the pigs, 29 strong and healthy, grunting in the pen. What about them, Jeremiah? What about everything we've built here? Jeremiah snarled. We didn't build nothing. You did the work, and I'm done pretending to be grateful for a wife who thinks she's the man of the house. You were a mistake, Catherine. His hand rose, fingers curling. A gesture she had seen too many times before. But this time, Catherine didn't cower. She didn't step back. Her green eyes hardened, and her voice came out cold as iron. You're not leaving, Jeremiah. The blow. Something in her tone pierced through his whiskey haze. For a moment, he looked uncertain, even confused. What are you talking about? He growled. I said, you're not leaving. This farm stays. And so do you. Rage flooded back into his face. He lunged at her, arm swinging. But Catherine was ready. In one smooth motion, she grabbed the heavy wooden feeding ladle from the bucket at her feet and swung. The ladle cracked against his temple with a sound that echoed in the foggy morning stillness. Jeremiah staggered, eyes wide, not with pain, but with disbelief. His hand touched the wound, came away red. You crazy bitch, he spat, staring at the blood on his fingers. You actually hit me. Catherine stood her ground, ladle clenched tightly. Her heart pounded, but her voice stayed calm. I warned you. I told you, you weren't leaving. The shift. Jeremiah straightened, wiping blood from his forehead. The shock drained from his face, replaced by something far darker. His expression twisted, his body shaking, not from drink this time, but from fury. You'll regret that, he growled, stepping toward her with slow, deliberate strides. I'll teach you what happens to wives who forget their place. And that's when Catherine noticed it. A flicker of something strange in his eyes. Not just rage, but a glimmer of madness, as if something inside him had broken loose. The moment stretched long, the pigs grunting nervously in their pen, the mist pressing down like a weight. Jeremiah O'Brien was coming for her. And Catherine knew this fight would end with only one of them still standing. Clapperboard closing tease for Part 3. In Part 3, we'll follow the violent struggle that erupted on that foggy March morning, and the decision that sealed Jeremiah's fate forever. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, and join us as the shadows of history reveal what Catherine O'Brien did next. Do you want me to continue Part 3 next in the same cinematic, cliffhanger-driven style, or should I wait until you confirm this tone is exactly what you want for the rest of the series? Part 3: The Hungry Pigs. Hook. What would you do if survival meant making a choice so dark that it could never be spoken aloud? Catherine O'Brien found herself standing on that edge, staring at her dead husband's body and realizing she had only one way to keep her secret safe. And it involved the most terrifying allies a woman could ever imagine, her pigs. The morning had fallen into an eerie silence after the struggle. Jeremiah lay face down in the mud, blood pooling beneath his head. The hay hook had slipped from his lifeless fingers, and his glassy eyes stared up at the gray Kentucky sky. Catherine stood frozen, her hands trembling, the wooden feeding ladle still slick in her grip. She had survived, but now came the real test. No one would believe her if she claimed self-defense. Women in 1850s Kentucky had few rights, especially immigrant women like her. The law would side with Jeremiah, even in death. To the men of the county, he was the landowner, the husband, the authority. She was just his wife, expected to obey. If she reported the killing, she'd hang. If she stayed silent, questions would come soon enough. Jeremiah's debts, his drinking, his gambling, people were always watching. Her heart raced as she tried to think. How could she make Jeremiah disappear? That's when she noticed the pigs. They had gathered at the fence, their snouts pressed to the wood, their eyes sharp and watchful. Hungry grunts rumbled from their throats. Catherine knew that sound well. It was the sound of animals ready to eat anything she put before them. And in that terrible, quiet moment, an idea as old as farming itself crept into her mind. Back in Ireland, she had heard stories whispered in farmhouses. Stories about pigs, how they could eat through bone, teeth, even hair, leaving nothing behind but memory. Farmers called them the perfect cleaners. Catherine had always dismissed those tales as peasant gossip. But now they didn't sound like superstition. They sounded like salvation. The thought should have filled her with horror. Instead, she felt strangely calm. This was just another farm problem. Jeremiah's corpse wasn't a husband anymore, it was a burden. And burdens, on the farm, had practical solutions. She changed into her oldest dress, tied a rag around her hair, and fetched tools, sharp kitchen knives, rope, an old canvas tarp. Before beginning, she took a deep swallow of Jeremiah's whiskey, letting the burn in her throat steady her shaking nerves. It was gruesome, back-breaking work. Jeremiah had weighed nearly 200 pounds, and dragging him was harder than lifting the heaviest feed sacks. Catherine's muscles screamed, her hands blistered, but she worked with grim determination. Bit by bit, she moved him toward the pen. The pigs grew louder, their snorts and squeals echoing like a chorus of demons. When the first chunk of flesh landed in the pen, the frenzy began. They tore into it with shocking speed, powerful jaws crunching through bone as though it were nothing more than brittle wood. Catherine forced herself not to look away. She fed them piece after piece, each one vanishing faster than the last. By the time the sun reached its highest point in the sky, there was almost nothing left of Jeremiah O'Brien. Nothing but a dark stain in the mud, which she quickly covered with hay and pig manure. His clothes and belongings went into the fireplace, reduced to ash and scattered with the ordinary soot of daily living. By evening, Catherine sat by the fire, staring at the flames. The house was quiet, too quiet. She had never known such silence without Jeremiah's voice slurring in anger, without his boots stomping across the floorboards. For the first time in years, she felt the faint stirrings of peace. But peace had come at a price that could never be repaid. Over the next days, Catherine perfected her story. She told neighbors that Jeremiah had gone to California to chase gold and fortune, just as he had always talked about. She even forged a letter in his handwriting, claiming he'd send for her when he was settled. People believed her, mostly. The pigs, however, carried the real secret. They had grown strong, sleek, and oddly restless. Their eyes followed her in a way that made her uneasy, as though they remembered the taste she had given them. They had been fed better than ever before, and they thrived. By summer, Catherine's pigs were the largest in the county. Farmers whispered about their size and health. Some even joked that she must have found a magic feed recipe. Catherine would smile politely, but never share her secret. Behind those polite smiles, though, one truth gnawed at her heart. The pigs had eaten Jeremiah, but they had also eaten her soul. And yet, her farm prospered. She rebuilt fences, repaired the cabin, and even paid off the mortgage. To the outside world, she was a woman transformed, stronger, wealthier, freer than ever before. But Catherine knew the truth. Every time she heard the pigs grunt at feeding time, her stomach tightened. Their sounds no longer reminded her of ordinary farm life. They reminded her of that day, the blood, the knives, the silence after death. And as the months passed, her pigs grew not just larger but hungrier. Always hungrier. Right finger to be continued in Part 4. Part 4: The Suspicious Visitor. Hook. When you bury a secret deep enough, you hope it stays hidden forever. But Catherine O'Brien was about to learn the truth. Secrets have a way of crawling back to the surface. And sometimes, they come knocking at your door in the shape of a stranger. Weeks had passed since Jeremiah's departure for California. Catherine kept her head down, tending to the pigs and running the farm as if nothing unusual had happened. Her story had spread across Harrison County. Jeremiah had left suddenly, chasing gold with other men who'd been talking of the West. Folks found it believable. After all, he'd bragged about it enough at the tavern. But not everyone was convinced. One sweltering afternoon in late June, a man in a fine coat arrived on horseback. His boots shone, his hat was spotless, and his manner was nothing like the rough farmers Catherine was used to. His name was Thomas McReynolds, a land speculator from Louisville. He had been corresponding with Jeremiah for months, negotiating to buy the O'Brien farm. Now he stood at Catherine's gate, smiling too politely, his sharp eyes studying every detail. "Good day, Mrs. O'Brien," he said, tipping his hat. "I expected to find your husband here. Is he about?" Catherine forced a smile, though her stomach twisted. "Jeremiah has gone west, Mr. McReynolds. California gold fever took him quicker than I could say goodbye." McReynolds raised an eyebrow. "California, you say? Funny. He wrote to me just weeks before, eager to finish our business here. Selling this land, he said, was his only chance to escape his debts." Catherine's fingers dug into her apron. She had prepared for this. "He changed his mind," she replied, voice steady. "Said he wanted to keep the farm. Sent me a letter from Missouri, told me to cancel the sale." From her pocket, she pulled out the forged letter, carefully written in Jeremiah's rough scrawl. McReynolds read it slowly, his lips tightening. "Strange," he murmured. "Most men desperate for California don't suddenly decide they love their farm." Catherine's heart pounded, but she held her ground. Jeremiah was a stubborn man. "You know that." For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then McReynolds tucked the letter into his coat. "Well, Mrs. O'Brien, I'll be staying in town a few days. If you change your mind about selling, you'll know where to find me." He tipped his hat again and rode off, but Catherine felt no relief. She saw it in his eyes, the doubt, the suspicion. He wasn't leaving this matter alone. That night, Catherine barely slept. Every creak of the cabin made her startle. She pictured McReynolds returning with questions, or worse, with the sheriff. She could lie about Jeremiah being gone, but if anyone started digging, literally digging, her secret would be uncovered in the mud by the pig pen. The pigs themselves seemed restless that night, their low grunts rising in eerie harmony with the wind. Catherine sat by the fire, clutching the poker in her hand, feeling as though the farm itself was holding its breath. By morning, she resolved to strengthen her cover story. She went into town, carrying baskets of eggs and cured pork to trade. At the market, she made sure to speak openly about Jeremiah's journey west, repeating details until others repeated them back. She laughed lightly, as though his absence were inconvenient but ordinary. But still, whispers followed her. Some neighbors noted how suddenly her pigs had grown, how healthy and strange they looked compared to the rest in the county. Others found it odd that Jeremiah had left without saying goodbye, not even to his drinking partners at the tavern. And then came Father O'Connell. The priest arrived at her farm 2 weeks after McReynolds, his black coat dusty from travel. He was kind-eyed but stern, the sort of man who saw more than people wanted him to. "My child," he said gently, "I hear Jeremiah has gone to California. Is it true?" Catherine nodded quickly. "Yes, Father. He left in a hurry. Said opportunity waits for no man." O'Connell frowned. "Strange, he never came for confession before leaving. He was troubled, that one. A soul like his should not go into the unknown unblessed." The priest's eyes searched hers, and Catherine felt her throat tighten. Did he suspect? Could he see the truth written across her face? She forced a smile. "Jeremiah was always impulsive. You know him." Father O'Connell sighed, but said no more. Before leaving, though, he blessed the pigs. He stood by the pen, sprinkling holy water as the animals pressed close, their greedy snouts pushing at the fence. "Fine beasts you have here," he remarked. "They'll serve you well." Catherine thanked him, but her skin prickled. For as the holy water touched their hides, the pigs only grew louder, their squeals shrill and wild, like laughter echoing across a graveyard. Summer deepened. The farm thrived. Catherine's pigs grew so large that neighboring farmers marveled. Offers came, good money for even a single hog, but she refused them all. These pigs weren't just livestock anymore. They were her protectors, her partners in survival. Yet every time she entered the pen, she felt their eyes on her. Hungry, watchful, almost remembering. One night, as thunder rolled across the hills, Catherine dreamed of Jeremiah. He stood at the edge of the pig pen, his face pale, his eyes empty. He raised the hay hook high above his head, but instead of striking her, he pointed it toward the pigs. "They know," he whispered in a voice like rustling hay. "They know what you did." Catherine jolted awake, drenched in sweat. Outside, the pigs were screaming, their cries carried on the storm winds. She pressed her hands to her ears, but the sound seeped through the walls. The farm was prospering. She had freedom, money, and peace she'd never known before. But the price of it all was beginning to follow her, in whispers, in suspicions, and in the eyes of the pigs who had tasted her secret. And now, Catherine feared, it wasn't just her neighbors watching. It was Jeremiah too. Right finger to be continued in part 5. Do you want me to also weave in a mini recap at the start of each part, like a YouTube storyteller does, reminding viewers of the last part so your audience doesn't get lost across the 10 episodes? Part 5 Whispers in the Night. Hook. Every secret leaves behind a shadow. And sometimes, that shadow grows so large it threatens to swallow you whole. Catherine O'Brien thought she had buried her husband's memory forever. But whispers were beginning to rise, from neighbors, from the pigs, and perhaps even from beyond the grave. By midsummer, Catherine had transformed her farm into something remarkable. The cabin roof no longer leaked, the fences stood straight and strong, and her pigs were the pride of Harrison County. Farmers came from miles around to marvel at their size and health. But admiration carried questions with it. Too many questions. "Strangest thing," said Mary Kellerman one afternoon, standing at the fence with a basket of apples. "Jeremiah always said he couldn't wait to sell this place and head west. Now suddenly, you're prospering without him. Why, it almost seems convenient." Catherine's smile stayed polite, but her stomach tightened. Jeremiah was a man of impulses, Mary. California was just another fancy dream. "He'll send for me soon, you'll see." But even as she spoke the words, she felt the lie growing heavier. That night, Catherine was jolted awake by a noise outside the cabin. At first, she thought it was the pigs squealing as usual. But when she listened closely, the sound was different. Lower, slower, like a man's heavy breathing. Her heart pounded. She grabbed the poker from the fireplace and stepped onto the porch. The yard was empty, the moon casting pale light across the farm. The pig pen loomed in the distance, its fence creaking in the night wind. The pigs stirred restlessly, their eyes glinting like coins in the dark. Catherine took a cautious step forward. "Who's there?" she called, her voice sharp. Only silence answered. Then, from the shadows, came a whisper. Faint, hoarse, unmistakable, "Catherine." She spun around, her breath catching. But no one stood there. The whisper seemed to come from everywhere, and nowhere. The pigs began squealing louder, their cries rising in a frenzy. Terrified, Catherine stumbled back inside, slamming the door shut. She pressed her back against it, clutching the poker until dawn. The next day, her nerves frayed, Catherine forced herself into routine. "Work," she told herself. "Work will keep me steady." She cleaned the pens, scattered feed, hauled water. Yet every time she looked at the pigs, she felt their eyes on her. Watching, waiting, and she swore she heard them whisper too, their guttural grunts twisting into sounds that almost formed words. Jeremiah. Jeremiah. She shook her head violently. It's the wind, just the wind, but deep down, she wasn't so sure. Trouble didn't stop there. Thomas McReynolds, the land speculator, returned to the farm. He leaned against the fence, his sharp eyes scanning the animals. "Fine pigs you've got, Mrs. O'Brien," he said smoothly. "Almost unnatural how well they're growing. Makes a man wonder what you're feeding them." Catherine forced a laugh. "Hard work and good feed. Nothing more." McReynolds tilted his head. "And your husband, still writing from California?" Her mouth went dry. "Yes. He's thriving out west. Sent word that I'm to keep the farm until he returns." The man's gaze lingered on her a moment longer, then slid to the pigs. "Funny thing about pigs, he mused. They'll eat near anything. Some say they'll even eat a man if you let them. Catherine's heart thudded like a drum. Did he know? Was he toying with her? She managed a tight smile. Stories for tavern talk, Mr. McReynolds. I've work to do. But as he tipped his hat and walked away, she felt her knees weaken. This man was dangerous, not because of what he knew, but because of what he suspected. That evening, Catherine sat by the fire, staring into the flames. The weight of her secret pressed heavier than ever. She could lie to neighbors, to priests, even to men like McReynolds. But she could not lie to herself. She remembered Jeremiah's eyes in his final moments, wild, furious, filled with murder. She remembered the sound of the ladle striking bone, the sickening silence afterward. She told herself again and again it had been self-defense. She had no choice. But the pigs, oh, the pigs had taken her necessity and twisted it into something monstrous. Because they had not just eaten Jeremiah. They had grown stronger from him. And sometimes, when she looked at them too long, she thought she saw his face reflected in their eyes. That night, the whispers returned. Louder this time, clearer. Catherine. She bolted upright in bed, the sound echoing through the cabin. This time she did not grab the poker. This time she walked slowly to the window and looked out. The pigs were awake, all of them, staring toward the cabin in perfect silence, their eyes glowing in the moonlight. And then, as one, they began to grunt. Slow, rhythmic, almost like a chant. Jeremiah. Jeremiah. Her throat went dry, her knees buckled, and in that moment, Catherine O'Brien knew two things for certain. First, her secret was no longer hers alone. And second, the pigs would never let her forget. Right finger to be continued in part 6. Do you want me to build part 6 with the horror intensifying, where Catherine starts to lose her grip on reality and the pigs almost become supernatural? Or should I keep it strictly historic with suspicion, neighbors, and law pressing down on her? Part 6. The Investigator. Hook. Whispers spread fast in small towns. And once a rumor takes root, it grows like wildfire, unstoppable, dangerous, and hungry. Catherine O'Brien thought she had hidden her sin beneath mud, fire, and silence. But now eyes were turning toward her farm. Eyes sharper than any neighbor's gossip. Eyes belonging to men who hunted for truth. By autumn, Catherine's pigs were the talk of Harrison County. They were bigger than any the farmers had seen, thick-shouldered and bright-eyed, as if they carried some unnatural strength in their blood. Buyers offered double the price at market, but Catherine refused. She kept her herd close, guarding them like treasure. That choice, protective, desperate, fed the gossip. She's bewitched those pigs, muttered one farmer over whiskey in the tavern. No animal grows that fast. Without devil's work. Another leaned closer. Or maybe Jeremiah fed them something unholy before he left. And she's keeping the recipe. The talk reached the ears of Father O'Connell, who began pressing Catherine harder during his visits. Tell me truthfully, he said one Sunday, his voice sharp. Did Jeremiah really go west, or are you hiding something, daughter? Catherine lowered her eyes, clutching her rosary. He went, Father, he went. The pigs are all I have left. But in her heart, she knew the priest didn't believe her. The real danger came a week later, in the form of a stranger. He rode into Cynthiana on a chestnut stallion, his coat long and black, his hat pulled low. People in the tavern whispered his name, Elias Turner, a Pinkerton man from Louisville. Known for sniffing out fraud, debt, and disappearance. And now, it seemed, he had come for Jeremiah O'Brien. Elias appeared at Catherine's farm one misty morning, his boots polished, his eyes pale and cold. He tipped his hat politely, but his smile never reached his eyes. Mrs. O'Brien, he said smoothly. Name's Elias Turner. I've been asked to look into your husband's affairs. Catherine's stomach twisted. Affairs, she echoed, keeping her voice steady. Yes, ma'am. Seems Jeremiah left behind debts in Louisville. Gambling, mostly. His creditors are concerned. They expected him west by now, but no word has reached them. Strange, isn't it? her hands clenched in her apron. Not strange. Jeremiah was a restless man, always chasing one dream after another. California was no different. Elias tilted his head. Then you must have letters. Proof he's safe out there. May I see them? Catherine froze. She had only forged the one letter, months ago, and burned every scrap of Jeremiah's belongings. I don't keep his letters, sir, she said quickly. Too painful. But he promised he would send for me. Elias studied her with unnerving stillness. Then his gaze drifted to the pig pen, where the animals pressed against the fence, grunting low and steady. Fine herd you've got there, he remarked. Strangest pigs I've ever seen. Almost human in their eyes. Catherine's skin prickled. She forced a smile. Good feed, that's all. But Elias Turner wasn't convinced. That night, Catherine lay awake, her chest tight with fear. The pigs shuffled in their pen, their movements louder than usual, their grunts echoing like voices in the mist. And then, clear as thunder, she heard it again. Jeremiah. Jeremiah. She sat up, clutching her quilt. Stop it, she whispered hoarsely. You're not him. You're pigs. Just pigs. But as she pressed her hands to her ears, another sound cut through, a laugh. Harsh, bitter. Jeremiah's laugh. Her heart nearly stopped. She rushed to the window. The pigs stared up at her, their mouths slick with mud, their eyes glowing in the moonlight. And in one pig, her largest boar, she swore she saw Jeremiah's face flash across its features. Twisted, sneering, alive. Catherine stumbled back, choking on fear. I'm losing my mind. I must be. But deep down, she wondered if Jeremiah was truly gone, or if the pigs had taken him in more ways than flesh. The next day, Elias returned. He walked the farm with calm precision, inspecting the cabin, the yard, the pig pen. Catherine followed, her nerves stretched thin. You keep these animals close, Elias said, resting a hand on the fence. Most farmers would have sold by now. Why not you? They're my future, she said sharply. I've lost enough. I won't lose them. His eyes narrowed. Lost enough, or taken enough. Her blood ran cold. You'll forgive me, ma'am, Elias went on, but I've met many widows, and you don't grieve like one. You look relieved. Catherine's lips parted, but no words came. Elias leaned closer, his voice low. I'll find the truth, Mrs. O'Brien. Men don't vanish without leaving bones behind. And bones have a way of telling stories. He tapped the fence once, almost like a warning, and walked back toward his horse. The pigs erupted into a frenzy, squealing and snorting until the ground shook. Catherine gripped the fence to steady herself, her heart hammering. For the first time, she wondered if she had made a mistake feeding them Jeremiah. Because now, it seemed, the pigs carried not only her secret, but also his spirit, and perhaps Jeremiah O'Brien was not finished with her yet. Right finger to be continued in part 7. Would you like part 7 to move into full psychological horror? Catherine tormented by visions, pigs becoming more unnatural or lean more historic legal suspense, Elias Turner digging deeper, neighbors spreading rumors, Catherine trapped. Part 7 The Curse of Flesh. Hook. Every sin demands payment. Sometimes the payment comes in coin, sometimes in blood, and sometimes in ways so twisted the sinner cannot escape. Catherine O'Brien thought she had buried her crime in silence, but the earth does not forget. And now the pigs she had once trusted began to turn against her. The nights grew colder in Harrison County, frost crawling across the fields. Catherine huddled by the fire each evening, but no warmth could keep the dread from her chest. She had stopped praying, for prayer no longer soothed her. The rosary beads felt like chains, pulling her deeper into guilt. Outside, the pigs had grown monstrous. Their bodies swelled beyond reason, muscles rippling under thick hide. Their eyes gleamed too bright in the dark, reflecting torchlight like polished stones. Villagers who passed her land at night whispered of shadows moving in the pen, shapes that looked less like pigs and more like people crawling on all fours. And every night, Catherine heard them. Not just the grunts, not just the squeals. No, words. Crooked, broken words. Hungry. Catherine. Jeremiah. She pressed her hands over her ears until they bled, but the voices pushed through, as if they rose from inside her skull. Elias Turner, the Pinkerton man, returned with questions sharper than before. Strange things are spoken about your pigs, he said one morning, his breath a pale mist in the air. Men swear they hear cries from your yard at night. Not animal cries, but human. Catherine forced a bitter laugh. Farmers drink too much whiskey, Mr. Turner. That's the only devil they know. But Elias didn't laugh. His pale eyes swept the yard, then landed on her face. I've hunted liars for 10 years, Mrs. O'Brien. I can smell truth rotting. And your farm stinks of it. Her knees nearly gave out, but she kept her chin high. Leave my land. You've no right to torment a widow. He studied her one long moment, then tipped his hat. Widow, he repeated softly, like a knife sliding between ribs. Then he walked away. That night, Catherine dreamed of Jeremiah. He stood at the edge of her bed, his face half rotted, his voice thick with mud. You fed me to them, he rasped. I had no choice, she whispered, trembling. You gave my flesh, and now they want more. You think pigs stop at one man? He leaned closer, his eyes glowing like the boar in the pen. They'll eat you too, Catherine. They'll eat you whole. She woke screaming, sweat freezing against her skin. The pigs outside answered with a chorus of squeals so loud the windows rattled. Days blurred into one another. Catherine stopped going to church. She stopped speaking to neighbors. She barely slept. She spent hours by the pig pen, staring at the animals as if daring them to speak again. Sometimes they did. One pig, the largest sow, began following her movements with uncanny precision. When Catherine paced the fence line, the sow matched her steps. When she paused, the animal stilled, watching her with human patience. One afternoon, Catherine swore she heard Jeremiah's voice come from that sow's throat. Catherine, hungry. She dropped the bucket of feed and ran, her legs trembling so hard she barely reached the cabin door. That evening, she did not feed them at all. But when she looked from her window, she saw the herd tearing at the soil, digging furrows with their snouts as if trying to claw free from the earth itself. By November, the neighbors had grown restless. A group of men came to Catherine's farm, led by Father O'Connell. Their faces were grim, their eyes sharp. Mrs. O'Brien, the priest said, voice low but firm, we've heard enough. Your farm is cursed. Those pigs of yours bring fear upon us all. We'll have them slaughtered and burned before winter, lest their plague spreads. Catherine's blood ran cold. Burn the pigs. That would expose everything, bones, teeth, fragments that the fire could not hide. No, she cried, clutching the doorway. They're mine. You have no right. Father O'Connell's eyes narrowed. A godly woman would not guard beasts so fiercely. Unless they are not beasts at all. The men muttered among themselves. Some looked ready to force the matter. But then Elias Turner appeared on horseback, his black coat whipping in the wind. Let her be, Elias ordered. For now, I'll settle this in due course. The crowd dispersed reluctantly, but Catherine knew their patience was thinning. That night, she prepared her escape. She gathered what little money she had, wrapped bread in cloth, and saddled the mule. She would leave under cover of darkness, abandon the farm, and start anew somewhere no one knew her name. But as she stepped from the cabin, the pigs erupted in a frenzy. Their squeals were deafening, their bodies slamming against the fence so hard the posts shook. The largest boar reared up, its front hooves striking the wood, and for a moment Catherine saw Jeremiah's face stretched across its snout, eyes blazing, mouth curled into a smile that promised revenge. Where, you, go? It grunted. Her legs turned to water. She stumbled backward, dropping her bundle. The herd surged against the fence, boards cracking under their weight. No, she screamed. Stay back. But the pigs did not stop. They pressed harder, their eyes glowing, their voices rising together in a grotesque chorus. Catherine! 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 The fence splintered. Catherine fled into the cabin, slamming the door and bolting it with trembling hands. The pigs battered against the walls, their screams shaking the night. She sank to the floor, sobbing, rocking back and forth. Then, amid the chaos, a knock came at the door. Not a crash, not a squeal. A steady, human knock. Her heart nearly stopped. Slowly, she rose, pressed her ear to the wood. "Mrs. O'Brien," came Elias Turner's calm voice. "Open up. We need to talk." But behind his words, beneath them, she swore she heard another voice. Jeremiah's. Low, mocking. "Open, Catherine. Let me in." She screamed and collapsed, the sound of pigs and men mixing into one monstrous song outside her door. Dash dash dash. Right finger to be continued in part 8. Dash dash dash. Do you want part 8 to show Elias finally uncovering Jeremiah's remains, historic suspense climax, or push deeper into supernatural horror where the pigs fully become monstrous and Catherine faces them head-on? Part 8: The Pig Pen Revelation. Hook. Secrets buried in the ground don't stay hidden forever. They rot. They rise. And when they rise, they demand to be seen. Catherine O'Brien thought she could control the whispers of the farm, but now the whispers had turned into screams. The truth clawed its way out of the earth, and the whole town was about to see it. Dash dash dash. The knocking on the door would not stop. "Mrs. O'Brien," Elias Turner's voice came again, steady as ever. "It's time." Catherine pressed her back to the wall, her heart hammering. The pigs outside shrieked and slammed against the cabin, their hoofs thundering like drums of war. She knew if she opened the door, she would face Elias. But if she kept it shut, the pigs might tear the house apart plank by plank. Her lips moved in a dry whisper, "Our Father, who art in heaven," but she stopped herself. She hadn't prayed in months. What good were prayers when God had abandoned her long ago? The knocking grew louder. Then, silence. The pigs quieted too. The sudden stillness was worse than the noise. Catherine's breath came in sharp gasps. She crawled to the window and peeked outside. The yard was empty. The fence around the pen was splintered and broken, but the pigs were nowhere in sight. No Elias. No one. Just fog rolling low across the fields. Her bundle still lay on the ground where she had dropped it earlier. Catherine's hand trembled on the latch. She opened the door a crack, then wider, stepping onto the porch. That's when she saw the footprints. Not human footprints. Hoof prints. Deep gouges in the mud, leading from the broken pen straight toward the far side of the property, toward the orchard where Jeremiah had first threatened to leave her. The orchard. Catherine's stomach turned. That was where she had buried what little remained of him after the pigs had taken their fill. Dash dash dash. By morning, neighbors had gathered again. Father O'Connell, 3 farmers, and Elias himself stood at the edge of the orchard, their eyes locked on the ground. The pigs had dug furrows deep into the earth. And in those furrows, bones gleamed pale in the morning sun. A skull, long femurs, scraps of torn cloth clinging to ribs. The men gasped. The priest crossed himself. Catherine stood on the porch, her face pale, her nails digging into her palms until blood ran down her fingers. She wanted to scream at them to leave, to cover the bones, to pretend they had never seen. But it was too late. Elias picked up a fragment of cloth, brown with mud but still showing a hint of Jeremiah's old work shirt. He looked at Catherine, his pale eyes hard as steel. "Care to explain, Mrs. O'Brien?" Her throat closed, her lips moved, but no sound came. Father O'Connell's voice rang out instead. "This is a sin most foul. Murder. Desecration." The farmers muttered curses, stepping back as though Catherine herself carried a plague. Elias didn't raise his voice, didn't move quickly. He just walked toward her, each step deliberate. "You fed him to the pigs, didn't you?" The words struck her like thunder. Catherine felt the ground tilt. She clutched the doorframe to keep from falling. "Yes," she whispered, though the word came out like a hiss. The men recoiled in horror. "But you don't understand," she said, her voice suddenly sharp, cutting through their disgust. "He was going to sell this farm. Take everything. Leave me with nothing." Father O'Connell shouted. "Better nothing than damnation, woman." But Elias only narrowed his eyes. "There's more here than greed and anger. I've seen men kill for less. But your pigs aren't natural. As if on cue, a squeal split the air. Everyone turned. From the orchard's edge, one of the pigs stood watching. The great sow. Its body was slick with mud, its eyes glowing faintly even in daylight. Its jaws dripped with soil, but lodged between its teeth was something pale, something unmistakably human. A finger. The farmers cursed and crossed themselves. The priest began praying in Latin. The sow stepped forward, slow, deliberate, unblinking. And then the rest of the herd emerged from the fog, surrounding the orchard like an army. Their bodies seemed larger than before, their movements too precise, too knowing. The air filled with their guttural grunts, which twisted into shapes of words. Catherine. Hungry. Jeremiah. The men froze. Elias alone didn't flinch, but his hand hovered near the pistol at his belt. Catherine's legs gave out. She dropped to her knees on the porch. Tears streaked her face. You see, she sobbed. It wasn't me. It was them. They won't let me go. The pigs shrieked in unison, a sound so loud and unnatural it rattled the windows. The sow charged. Elias drew his pistol and fired. The shot cracked through the orchard, echoing across the hills. The bullet struck the sow square in the head. It staggered, blood spraying, but did not fall. Instead it let out a scream that sounded less like an animal and more like a man's dying cry. Jeremiah's cry. The farmers fled, stumbling over each other to escape. Father O'Connell dropped his crucifix in the mud as he ran. But Elias stood his ground. Smoke curled from his pistol barrel. Hell or not, he muttered, I'll put you back where you belong. The pigs roared, surging forward. Catherine clutched her head and screamed. The orchard exploded with chaos, hoofs pounding, men shouting, the crack of gunfire. And above it all, Catherine heard Jeremiah's voice again, clear and cruel. You can't bury me, Catherine. I'll always come back. Through the pigs. Through the land. Through you. Her vision blurred. Her body shook. And as she collapsed onto the porch boards, she realized the truth. She had not just killed her husband. She had unleashed something that could never die. Right finger to be continued in part 9. Would you like part 9 to show the pigs going full supernatural, unstoppable horrors, or shift toward Elias and Catherine's confrontation as he tries to bring justice while she believes only fire or blood can end the curse? Part 9. Fire in the orchard. Hook. Evil has a way of clinging to the earth, like roots that won't die no matter how often you cut them down. Catherine O'Brien thought Jeremiah's death had freed her. Instead, his spirit and his pigs had grown stronger, hungrier, more impossible to stop. Now, as fire and blood filled the Kentucky night, Catherine realized the farm itself had become a battlefield between the living and the damned. The orchard burned. Flames snapped across the trees, the dry branches crackling as sparks shot into the foggy air. Elias Turner had set the blaze himself, torching the ground where Jeremiah's bones had surfaced. The firelight glowed on his hard face, painting him like some avenging angel come to punish sin. But the pigs did not burn. They surged through the flames as if the fire were nothing but mist, their skin glowing red and slick like molten iron. Their eyes shone brighter than ever, eyes that were no longer animal, but human. Eyes that knew. One of the farmers who had returned to help screamed when a massive boar clamped its jaws around his arm. The crunch of bone was louder than his cry. The pigs dragged him into the orchard, and within seconds his voice was gone, smothered beneath snarls and tearing flesh. The others fled again, shouting prayers, curses, anything that might keep the horror at bay. Only Elias stood his ground, reloading his pistol with calm, steady hands. Hell's already here, he muttered. Might as well send it back. Catherine crawled across the porch, clutching at the steps. Smoke burned her throat. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her eyes stayed locked on the monstrous sow at the center of the herd. It was Jeremiah's eyes staring back at her. His mocking smirk twisted across the animal's face. The sound that came from its throat was no longer a grunt. It was words. Hungry, wife. Catherine screamed. Elias fired again, the bullet striking the sow's skull. Blood sprayed, sizzling against the flames, but the beast only staggered, shaking its head as if swatting away a fly. They won't die, Catherine cried, her voice breaking. I fed them too much of him. He's inside them now. He's all of them. Elias didn't answer. He just raised his pistol again. But before he could fire, 3 pigs rushed him from the side. Their jaws locked onto his legs, dragging him to the ground. His gun skidded into the mud. "Run!" he shouted at Catherine as he wrestled with the creatures. But Catherine didn't run. She stumbled down the steps, grabbed the fallen pistol, and aimed at the sow. Her hands shook so badly she could barely keep her finger on the trigger. Jeremiah's voice boomed from the beast's throat. "You'll never escape me. You're mine. You always were." Her vision blurred with tears. She pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the orchard. The bullet tore through the sow's eye. For a moment, there was silence. Then the beast let out a scream so loud the flames bent in the air like they were bowing before it. The sound wasn't just Jeremiah, it was dozens of voices, men and women, wailing from the pig's throat. Catherine dropped the gun, clutching her ears. Her knees hit the mud. The sow stumbled, then collapsed onto its side. The other pigs froze, their eyes flickering, their bodies trembling as if caught between worlds. Elias pulled himself free of their jaws, blood streaming from his shredded leg. "It's dying," he hissed through clenched teeth. "Finish it." But Catherine couldn't move. She could only stare as the sow's body convulsed. Its skin split open, and something began to crawl out. At first it was just bones. A rib cage pushing through flesh. Then a skull, half rotted, with Jeremiah's crooked grin still fixed on its jaw. The pigs backed away, squealing in terror. Even they seemed afraid of what was emerging. Catherine fell onto her back in the mud, scrambling to get away as the thing clawed free. Jeremiah's skeleton, wrapped in shreds of muscle and dripping blood, rose up from the sow's corpse. His empty sockets glowed with fire. "You thought you could feed me to the pigs," he croaked, his voice echoing from a throat that no longer had lungs. "But I am the pigs. I am the farm. I am you." Elias groaned, crawling toward his fallen torch. His voice was hoarse but firm. "Fire. Only fire will end this." Catherine looked from the torch to Jeremiah's burning eyes. Her whole body shook. For years she had lived in terror of this man. Even in death, he had chained her soul to him. Now, as his skeletal hand reached for her, she understood, if she didn't destroy him now, she would never be free. She grabbed the torch. Flames licked her arm, but she held it tight. She screamed as she swung it into Jeremiah's chest. The skeleton erupted in fire. Jeremiah's howl split the night, louder than the pigs, louder than the fire, louder than anything Catherine had ever heard. His bones cracked and shattered, collapsing into a heap of glowing ash. The pigs shrieked and scattered, fleeing into the dark hills. The orchard blazed higher, smoke pouring into the sky like a black flag of war. And then there was silence. Catherine collapsed in the mud, sobbing, the torch falling from her burned hand. Elias dragged himself closer, his leg torn and useless. He stared at the smoldering ashes, his face grim. "It's done," he said. But his eyes didn't look certain. Catherine lifted her head, her face streaked with tears and soot. The fire crackled, the orchard burned, and beneath the flames, from the dark earth itself, she thought she heard it. A laugh. Jeremiah's laugh, faint but alive. She pressed her hands to her ears and screamed. Dash dash dash. Right finger to be continued in part 10. Dash dash dash. Would you like the final part 10 to end with Catherine's full downfall, Jeremiah's curse consuming her, or to twist into her finding a way to break free of him once and for all, even if it costs her life? Part 10 The Curse of O'Brien's Farm. Hook. Some evils don't die with fire. Some roots sink too deep, poisoning the land forever. Catherine O'Brien believed she had burned Jeremiah into ash, but curses are like seeds, they sprout again when the soil is wet with blood. And on that final night, she learned that no one truly escapes the hunger of the farm. Dash dash dash. The orchard was gone by morning. All that remained were blackened stumps, smoke still curling from the charred earth. Catherine stood barefoot in the mud, her dress torn, her skin streaked with soot. She had not slept. Her body trembled, but her mind refused to rest. Elias Turner lay inside the cabin, his leg ruined. He had lost so much blood during the night that Catherine wasn't sure he would survive until the next sunrise. She had bound the wound with strips of linen, but she had little hope. The pigs had vanished into the hills. At least, most of them. As dawn rose, Catherine heard the low grunt of one sow. She turned her head sharply and saw it standing in the smoke, larger than before, its skin blistered but unburned. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. And then it spoke. Not in Jeremiah's full voice, not yet. But the whisper was enough. Hungry. Catherine stumbled back. She had burned Jeremiah's skeleton. She had scattered his ashes. But his soul had not gone. It had slipped into the herd, into the soil, into the very bones of the farm. Her hands clutched her head as her thoughts twisted. There was nowhere to run. Even if she abandoned the land, who would believe her story? What if the pigs followed her, carrying Jeremiah's voice into every place she fled? She had only one choice left. She had to end it. Not with guns. Not with fire. With blood. Dash dash dash. Inside the cabin, Elias stirred. His voice was weak, ragged. You can't fight it, he whispered when Catherine told him what she had seen. I have to, she said, her jaw clenched. I won't let him own me, not in life, not in death. Elias tried to sit up, but the pain bent him back down. Catherine, listen to me. This isn't just Jeremiah anymore. It's bigger than him. It's the land itself now. This farm is cursed. Always was. That's why he was so desperate to leave. He knew. But Catherine wasn't listening. Her eyes had gone hard, her hands steady again. She picked up the bloodied knife she had used to dress Elias's wound. She tied her long red hair back, her face set in stone. If the farm wants blood, she said coldly, then it'll have mine. And his. Dash dash dash. Night fell quickly, as if the sky itself wanted no part in what was coming. Catherine stood in the pig pen, lantern in one hand, knife in the other. The air was thick with mist and smoke, swirling around her legs like ghostly fingers. The pigs returned one by one. Their eyes glowed like embers in the dark. Their hooves sank into the mud with heavy, deliberate steps. They formed a circle around her, silent, watching. Then, the largest of them moved forward, the blistered sow, Jeremiah's spirit flickering inside its gaze. It grunted once, then twice, and Catherine heard the words behind the sound. You're mine. Catherine raised the knife. Her voice rang out, strong and sharp. No, you're mine. She plunged the blade into her own palm, letting the blood spill into the mud. The pigs squealed in frenzy, throwing their heads back, their eyes burning brighter. Catherine smeared the blood across her face like war paint. If this land is cursed, she shouted, then I will be its master. The pigs charged. The pen filled with thrashing bodies, snapping jaws, and the scream of a woman who no longer feared death. Neighbors claimed they heard it that night, the unholy shrieks rising above the hills, louder than thunder, sharper than the crack of lightning. Some swore the sound was human, others that it was 1,000 pigs crying in one voice. Few dared to approach the O'Brien farm again. Dash dash dash. By dawn, the cabin was empty. Elias was gone, his blood-soaked bed cold. The pen was trampled flat, the fence broken. Not a single pig remained. Not a single trace of Catherine. But the land was not empty. Travelers who passed by in later years spoke of strange noises at night. Of eyes glowing in the orchard where no pigs had been for decades. Of laughter, low, mocking laughter, that rolled across the fields when the moon was full. The farm never sold. It rotted into ruin, the cabin collapsing into weeds, the fences swallowed by briars. But locals kept their distance. They whispered of the woman who had fed her husband to the pigs and, in the end, became something far worse. Some say Catherine O'Brien still walks the farm, her dress torn and bloody, her eyes glowing like the pigs she commanded. Others claim she was eaten, her body and soul split among the herd, so that every squeal in the dark carries a piece of her. But one thing everyone agrees on: the O'Brien farm is not a place for the living. The soil itself is hungry. Dash dash dash. Epilogue. Narrator's voice. So ends the tale of Catherine O'Brien, the woman who tried to kill her husband's ghost and instead became part of it. A story of betrayal, blood, and hunger that never dies. Some call it history, some call it legend, but in Kentucky, when the fog rolls thick over old farmland, folks still warn. Don't feed the pigs after dark. Loudspeaker call to action for YouTube audience. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe for more chilling tales from history. Don't forget to like this video, share it with friends who love horror, and drop a comment below. Right finger, do you think Catherine became the master of the curse, or just another victim of it? Your thoughts might inspire the next horror story.